And good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersey Joe. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Hey, I heard you had a little snow out your way.
Yeah, I had to brush the snow off the car this morning before leaving for work.
First snow of the season, huh?
Yep, the first shovelable snow of the season.
The
Because it
first what?
actually snowed yesterday, but just flurries.
This flurries. Okay. All right. Anyway, interesting show today. You want to hear what we're going to try to squeeze in?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
Well, today is November 11th, day 42 of the government shutdown, but it looks like the end is in sight, and we'll tell you what's going to happen next. Our quote of the week is from our old friend, the late economist Milton Friedman, on how government solutions to problems can be worse than the problems they were trying to fix.
Hmm.
And our stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll tell you what the Chicago Teachers Union spent $173,000 on and where the thing that they bought is located. On the issue of SNAP benefits, we'll tell you which states have the highest percentage of their residents receiving those benefits. Moving on to New York City, now that Zohran Mamdani has won the race to be the next mayor of New York City, we'll tell you what the governor of New York State has said regarding his promise to make all buses free in New York City and ask why she didn't make that announcement prior to last Tuesday's election. We'll tell you about about a Minneapolis-based charity formed to supposedly feed hungry children and how they defrauded taxpayers out of millions of dollars and how they did it. We'll tell you what has happened, what has to happen for this shutdown to end, and why the Democrat claims that they were fighting to prevent the loss of Affordable Care Act health subsidies was always nonsense. We'll tell you which states are leading the nation in terms of net loss of residents and why. We'll play a clip of a father testifying about the murder of his daughter at the hands of a career criminal and asking the question, why wasn't that man in jail? And finally, our taxpayer relief shot this week is a follow-up from one that took place that we did in Baltimore last month, where an elderly jewelry store owner shot and killed a burglar. So, by the way, before I do that, I came across an interesting statistic today. Um, in a typical business, any idea how what percentage of the workforce not laid off, but actually fired either for misconduct or drinking or drugs or stealing or fighting or sexual harassment? Any idea what that percentage is or should be?
Oh, well, it should be zero, but I'm gonna guess it's probably pretty low. I'm gonna say less than 10%.
It is. It's typically, between 3 and 5%.
Yeah.
So out of 100 people, in a given year, 3 to 5, either for incompetence or coming
Mhm.
in late, chronic lateness, bad at their job, fighting with other employees. They've got a drug problem. They got a stealing problem. I found out today. Do you know how many people in the federal government get what percentage of the federal? By the way, there's 1.6 million people work, not counting the military. 1.6 million people. So let's see, 10% would be 160,000. 1% would be 16,000. 1% would be 16,000. So 3% would be like 48,000.
Hmm.
You know what percentage of the federal
I'm gonna
workforce get?
say it's probably less than the national average.
How about 0.25%? Susan,
Yeah.
4,040 people out of 1.6 million got fired.
Hmm.
Can you imagine out of 1.6
Yeah.
million, only 4,000 got fired for cause?
Yeah.
Is that just mind
That
blowing?
is crazy. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so by the way, you probably, in the time you spent at Penn State, you probably, how many people work at Penn State roughly?
30,000.
Is that just at your campus?
No, that's system wide.
So how many people at your campus would you say?
Oh,
Half of
20,
that?
20,000.
All right. So out of 20,000, 0.2%, I mean, how many people are you aware of that have been fired in the time you spent at Penn State?
Very few, just a handful.
Okay. All
And
right.
there's well, and I should also say, some of the employees we do have a union. And of
Okay.
course, if it's a union, you have to go through the whole process. But
Okay.
other than like sort of like you said, stealing, fighting, like violence,
Right.
it's
Incompetence, chronic lateness,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Drugs on the job. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's move on, try to wade through this. All right. Here's our quote by economist Milton Friedman. He said, the government's solution to a problem is usually as bad as the problem they were trying to fix. And there we have example after example of that. They there's a problem when they come up with a solution. The solution makes the problem even worse or creates a different problem. So that's our. For those of you who are not familiar with government solutions, trust me, government solutions generally don't. If they fix the first problem, they create a second problem that was sometimes worse than the first problem. All right, nothing to see here category. This is the stupidest thing I heard all week. So the it came out in one of their, because they're a nonprofit. Chicago Teachers Union is a nonprofit organization. Um, it turns out in their filing with the IRS, it turns out that they spent $173,000 to quote to buy. You know what they bought? And they bought it in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know what they bought in
What did
Albuquerque, New Mexico?
what did they buy for $137,000?
173,000. They bought a quote recording studio in Albuquerque that just happens to come with a pool. So I guess. And by the way, if you're going to use a recording studio in Albuquerque, like for training videos and
How do you get there?
political things, you can rent recording studios by the hour for about 120 bucks an hour. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did actually know that.
Okay. But if you're going to if you're a Chicago-based teachers union and you're going to be recording stuff, you're going to have to put people on an airplane round trip to Albuquerque, and you can't go Chicago, Albuquerque, record your stuff and get back on the same day. So you're going to have overnight food and lodging, right?
Yeah.
So if you're the Chicago Teachers Union, unless you're recording hundreds, if not thousands of hours of training videos and political announcements, why on earth would you buy a recording studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico with a pool?
You wouldn't.
So So is that just was that so either that's the stupidest thing I've heard all week,
Yeah.
or somebody just wanted a vacation home.
Gross misuse of funds.
Gross misuse of funds. 170 to buy a recording studio in Albuquerque, Chicago Teachers Union. All right. Let's move on to SNAP beneficiaries by state. You want to guess which state, or you want to guess at maybe out of the top 10? You want to try to name some of the states out of the top
Uh,
10?
New York, California.
Yep, New York. Actually, California doesn't came in at 13.
Oh, wow. Okay. New Jersey.
No, okay, actually, New Jersey's in the bottom 10.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Illinois.
Illinois is number 10. New York's number 9. Pennsylvania number 8.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Primarily because of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Yep. Makes sense. Uh,
Here's the rank. Here's the top 10.
Missouri.
All right. Here, not number one, New Mexico,
Wow.
21.49, which means more than
Wow.
1 in 5 people in New Mexico is getting SNAP benefits.
That's high.
Here's one surprised me. Oregon, 18.9.
Wow.
Louisiana, 17.49.
That one doesn't really surprise me.
West Virginia, 15%, 1 in
Yeah, that
7.
doesn't
Nevada,
surprise.
15%, surprised me. Here's one that surprised me. Massachusetts, 15%.
That is surprising.
Yeah, that's again, 15% is 1 out of 7 people. Now, in terms of the lowest, here's the bottom 10. Wyoming at 4.6%, which is 1/5, less than a fifth. Remember, we said New Mexico is
Yeah.
21%.
Yeah.
Wyoming's at 4. Utah 5%. New Hampshire 5.37. Kansas 6.2. Idaho 6.6. Montana 7.8. North Dakota 7.1. Nebraska 7.5. Arkansas 7.7. Minnesota 7.8. So there's your lowest 10. Minnesota,
Yeah.
Arkansas, Nebraska, North Dakota, Montana. Kind of a good kind of blue collar work
Yeah.
ethic in
Yeah.
those, right? But again, going back to the top 10, New Mexico, Oregon, Louisiana, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Nevada, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York, and Illinois. So that's
I'm
where your
surprised by
food.
I'm surprised by some of those states.
Yeah. But in Pennsylvania, you've got 1.96 million people. What's the population in Pennsylvania?
13 million, give or take.
Well, you got roughly 2 million out of 13 are getting SNAP benefits.
Mhm.
And the monthly amount in Pennsylvania is 355,000 a month, which times 12 is basically 4 billion a year going in food benefits to Pennsylvania.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and that this list, anybody wants to see it, it'll be in the show notes. If you go to the website, jerseyjoe.com, you'll be able to click on the link and read and see where your state sits.
Mhm.
All right. Let's move on to our next topic. All right. So remember Mondami made many he talked about free buses, he talked about city-run grocery stores, he talked about free childcare. Well, Governor Hochul, by the way, the bus system in New York City is not a New York City bus system. It's part of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA, which is the buses and the trains and the subways. All the trains that come in from Westchester and Connecticut,
Hmm.
and the tunnels and the subway system. That's all part of the Metropolitan Transit and the Long Island Railroad. It's all part of the MTA, which is a state organization, not a city organization. Well, here's what Governor Hochul had to say about Mondami's promise to make the buses free. And here we go.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul is casting doubt on Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani's campaign promise to make buses fast and free. The governor speaking to New York One while in Puerto Rico over the weekend.
I cannot set forth a plan right now that takes money out of a system that relies on the fares of the buses and the subways. But can we find a path to make it more affordable for people who need help? Of course we can.
Mamdani stayed on track Monday.
So she said, no, basically, she said, no, it ain't going to be free. Now, can we do something in terms of discounted bus passes, make it affordable? But my question is this: she knew that weeks and weeks ago, from the day he made that promise, she knew it wasn't something she was going to support. Why did she wait till after the election was over to say, ain't going to
Yeah,
happen?
why is that? So one,
Yeah.
he had zero authority to make such a promise.
Right.
Still, who's going to pay for it? Even if he could do it, and even if he can work out a deal with them, still, who's going to pay for it? And
Yeah.
yeah, why didn't she burst his bubble before the election?
Well, not a burst of bubble. Why didn't she let the voters know, hey, this guy is basically bullshitting you? You wonder
Yeah.
why she waited till after the election over before to tell the voters in New York City that this guy's bullshitting you. Yeah, you
Yeah.
would. Anyway, so
I'd
that's
like
where.
to know. Inquiring minds would like to
Well,
know.
all right, all right. 2 weeks ago, you remember we taught you we remember what's an NGO? Remember what an NGO is?
I forget what the exact acronym stands for, but
Non-governmental
yep.
organization.
Yep.
Okay. And basically, if you want to form an NGO, you could form an NGO and apply for government grants. You can say, hey, we want to create shelters for homeless people. We want
Mhm.
to feed hungry people. We want to provide drug counseling, whatever. And you can get taxpayer money. Well, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the one in St. Louis, where the people that founded the NGO, out of the $20 million in taxpayer money they got, they spent 11 million on themselves. Remember, buying homes, a vacation. The woman bought a $100,000 car for
Yeah.
her boyfriend. Remember that? We talked about that
Yep.
2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Well, in Minneapolis, it turns out they just uncovered another NGO fraud. And let me tell you what that happened. So a Somalian restaurant in Minneapolis took in $12 million in federal child meal payments.
Oh,
They said they were feeding between 4,000 and 6,000 kids a day,
what?
a day, a day. And this is one restaurant,
One little restaurant.
right? That were going to feed 4,000, 6,000 kids a day. In fact, they only averaged 40 people a day during a 6 week surveillance period. So instead of 4,000, 6,000, they were feeding 40 people a day, and many of them were paying customers. So how did they pull this off? Well, they created fake names and invoices, which they sent to the Minneapolis Department of Education, which apparently was aware of that and did nothing. Well, the FBI installed surveillance cameras overlooking the building off Lake Street. At the time, it was called the Safari Restaurant, and which overall took in 12 million in federal child meal payments. Blah blah blah. Meal anyway. FBI agent testifying that the average of 40 people came in and went during the 6 weeks that were surveilled. They had 12 people, so a big thing. Anyway, another was at a deli in St. Paul, Minnesota, which also registered by the same defendant, which claimed to be serving 1,800 meals per day. The video showed to the jury showed they average of just 23 people a day coming and going, most of them paying customers.
Mhm.
So they were submitting invoices for 1,800 meals a day when only 23 people a day were going in and out of the restaurants. So if you don't think that there's fraud and corruption with NGOs, these St. Louis and this one, these are not rare. A few months ago we talked about Stacey Abrams down in Georgia. She set
Mhm.
up an NGO and got, I think, $2 billion from the Biden administration. And the first thing they did, well, first thing she did was give herself a $250,000 salary and then make a huge donation to the Biden campaign.
Mhm.
But I personally think, and I think if you're an NGO getting money, taxpayer money, that you should be prohibited from donating to anybody's political campaign, don't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's just the way it works. You give me a grant, and I'll kick back some of the grant money to your campaign.
Mhm.
All right. All right, so let's talk about the end of you heard that late yesterday the Senate voted to approve the revised continuing resolution. Did you know it was a revised continuing resolution?
No, I didn't.
Well, let's just back up. All right. So 6 weeks ago, the House passed a what's called a clean continuing resolution, something that the Biden administration did 13 times in Republic. It basically says, hey, we're not going to change anything. We're not going to cut $1. We're simply going to continue to fund the government at the identical levels that it's been funded up until the date that the fiscal year ended on September 30th. No cuts, no reductions, no changes. It's called a clean resolution. Whatever we were spending in the month of September, which was the last month of the fiscal year, we're going to continue to spend, and we're going to do it for 7 more weeks. Well, the Democrats held that up for the last 6 weeks with a filibuster saying, no, we're not going to let you vote on that to continue to fund the government because we want this, we want that, we want this, we want that. Um, and that's where we are. And again, it's because it was a filibuster. They wouldn't let a vote come. Well, with only 1 week left in that original 7 weeks, it made no sense to pass the original continuing resolution because the next week they'd have to do it over again. So what they did is they came back and said, all right, here's a new continuing resolution that'll take us through the end of January. Same deal. We're going to continue to fund the government at the identical level that it has been funded right up through September 30th. No cuts, no changes. Whatever the Biden administration was spending, we'll spend. Every program remains fully funded until the end of January. So the Senate passed that last night at 4 o'clock. Now, because it's not identical to the bill they got from the House on October 1st, the House has to come back and vote on this amended bill. And the House is, under the rules of the House, the members have to be given 36 hours notice. And with airline delays, so Speaker Mike Johnson has told the House, we're going to vote on this bill tomorrow at 4 o'clock, Wednesday at 4 o'clock, Wednesday, November 12th at 4 o'clock. And hopefully there'll be enough. Republicans have a majority in the House. There is no such thing as a filibuster in the House. Plus, I think it'll have some support by Democrats. So hopefully tomorrow at 4 o'clock, actually it'll probably take an hour. You got 435 congressmen. Probably take an hour to get through a roll call vote. So by 5:30, I think that modified continuing resolution, which will keep the government funded till January 30th, will pass, and then it has to go over to Trump's desk. Whether he signs it Wednesday night or Thursday morning, if all goes as planned, the shutdown should end probably on Thursday. That's where we are.
So is it January 1st or January 31st?
January 31st.
And then what happens on January 31st, though, if they
Well,
don't?
hopefully they'll be working on coming up and getting agreement on a full year budget. Now, when I say full year, the government's budget runs from October 1 to September 30th. So
Mhm.
they've got the next 2.5 months to work on a budget for 2026.
Mhm.
And hopefully they get that hammered out so that we don't have to have another continuing resolution. But if they don't get it done, they'll have to come up with another continuing resolution.
And meanwhile, the people who are suffering most are the middle class air traffic controllers, TSA, Social Security Administration workers.
Well, they'll get paid, they'll get back pay.
They'll get back pay, but meanwhile, they
get,
haven't had 3 paychecks.
right, they've missed 3 paychecks, which they'll get probably within the next 5 or 6 days. And plus, they'll continue to get their regular paychecks up through the end of January.
Yeah.
And hopefully the Congress can get its act together and come up with a compromised budget before January, before this current continuing resolution runs out. All right. All right. You want to move on? You got anything more questions on
Nope.
the House? All right.
Nope.
So which do you think the top 5 states that have now, by the way, let me tell you some bias. This is according to United Van Line keeps track of where they get paid to move people out of and where they get people to move into. And here's the bias. People who live in an apartment, single people, young couples with very little furniture, they don't. United Van Line move, depending on how far you're moving, is a $6,000 to $13,000
Yeah.
ticket. But if you've got a one-bedroom apartment and it's you and your girlfriend, you and your wife, you got no kids, and you want to move across town, you're going to want a U-Haul truck and get a couple of friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this is a little lopsided because the United Van Line is only people who are affluent enough where they've got a big house, seven or
Mhm.
6 or 7 rooms of furniture, and they can afford to pay $6,000 or $7,000, $6,000 to $13,000 for a move. So we're talking kind of, probably the upper 25, upper 30% of income earners, right?
Mhm.
You want to take a guess at some of the states where they're moving out of, according to United Van Lines?
Well, I'm going to say New York and New Jersey for sure.
You got two of the five,
Illinois,
three of the five,
uh, California.
four of the five.
Oh, gee, got one left. Massachusetts.
5 out of 5. And Massachusetts, by the way, just imposed a billionaire tax. So what do these five blue states, New Jersey, Illinois, New York, California, Massachusetts, all have in common?
They're all blue Democratic states.
States with high property taxes. They all
Yep.
have they all have an income tax.
Yep.
By the way, the top tax rate in California is 12.5%. Massachusetts just imposed a billionaire surtax. New York, if you work in New York, not only are you paying a 12% state tax, you're paying a 4% city tax, which Mamdani wants to make 6% if you make over $1 million a year. So if you make over $1 million a year in New York, you're gonna be paying 12 plus 6, you're gonna be paying 18% in New York. Then of course you got Illinois and New Jersey. Um, so that's the buy. And again, uh, it doesn't count people who move themselves in a U-Haul truck.
Hmm.
But when you look, if you're these states and you're losing the people who can afford to pay United Van Lines to move them out of state,
Hmm.
you're losing a good chunk of your high-end taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
And
right.
that's how he's planning to pay for all the things that he promised.
Yep.
So if they all move, where's the money going to come from? Again.
You and I are probably familiar with the tale of the goose that laid the golden egg, right?
Yep. Yep.
Apparently, he's never read it, not familiar with it, because that's exactly what's happening. And same thing, by the way, in California, we talked about all the refineries and like people like
Yep.
Oracle, Tesla, the refineries are all saying bye-bye, see you later. Chevron moved out their corporate
Yep.
headquarters. They're committing fiscal suicide. They're basically driving out the people. By the way, here's a stat for you. You want to guess what percentage of the tax of New York City income taxes are paid by the top 1%?
Uh, I have no idea.
49%. Can you
Wow. Yeah.
imagine? 49% of your city income taxes are paid by 1% of the population,
Mhm.
and you're driving these people out?
Yep.
God. All right. Um,
And so once he implements these programs, either the programs are going to get cut or he's going to have to move that tax down to the middle class.
exactly. Yeah. So either he's going to have to slash and burn. By the way, he also promised to freeze rents. He has no control. There's a rent control board, which is not appointed by the mayor. It's an
Mhm.
independent body, so he has no power to freeze rents. And he's also promised free daycare for every kid in the city. Uh, don't know how he's going to pay for that either. All
Yeah,
right.
how are you going to pay for that?
All right. Hey, I want to move on to a topic we've talked about before. And I know we've talked about how important it is about who you vote for judges and
Yeah.
district attorneys, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was another tragedy a couple of weeks ago in South Carolina. A guy's daughter, she was 23. She went to visit some friends at the University of South Carolina. And in the middle of the night, somebody broke into the house where she was staying and murdered her. Well, here's her father testifying. And I'm going to cut out some of the stuff at the beginning and only play it. It's very, very emotional. It's 5 minutes long. Beautiful 23-year-old girl. Guy breaks in the middle of the house, middle of the night, and basically execute her. And listen to what this guy's track record was, according to the father. And he's really emotional. Here we go.
She was 5'3". She weighed 115 pounds. Dead. Gone. Why? Because Alexander Devontae Dickey, who was arrested 39 goddamn times, 25 felonies, was on the street. How about that? How good are we doing for our family? How good are you doing for your kids? He should have been in jail for over 140 years for all the crimes he committed. You know how much time he spent in prison? A little over 600 days in 10 years.
Did you get that? The guy that based on the crimes he committed, he could have been in jail for 140 years. Instead, he spent less than 2 years, six in total, not consecutively, less than 600 600 days in jail for committing,
which is less than 2 years.
Less than 2 years for 25 felony convictions. And this girl is dead because this guy was still out on the street.
Even if those were misdemeanors, I mean, all those misdemeanors have to add up. And he's talking about felonies.
Yeah, well, he was arrested 39 times, of which 25 were felony, which means he was, the other 14 were misdemeanors. So he had 14 misdemeanor arrests and 25 felonies. And he could have been sentenced to, consecutively. I mean, if every time he had committed one of these things, he got the max, he could have been spending 140 years in jail. But despite being convicted of 14 misdemeanors and 25 felonies, he spent less than 600 days in jail over a 10-year period. And these are the people running around on the street. So again, judges and district attorneys matter. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, with knowing that people like this are being let out, I mean, if you're people like this and you say, oh, what the hell, even if I get caught, I'm going to spend what, a month, 2 months in jail? You're going to do it. There's no disincentive to not do it again. Because, if you do it 10 times and you get caught twice,
it's like all those thefts that are happening in all the CVSs and Rite Aids in California because it's a misdemeanor. They literally just, they do nothing. Nothing happens to these people, so they just keep on doing it.
Yeah, when you get caught, you get a ticket. If you get caught, which is rare because the police don't respond, you maybe get a ticket. But again, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have a gun, because just, what's happening in South Carolina and New York City is not unique. It's happening now. It's not happening in places like Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, Texas. But if you live in a very blue state, my advice to you is if you don't own a gun, or some other means to protect yourself, I think you're rolling the dice with your life and the life of your family every single day.
Absolutely.
Because there are evil people, evil exists. And this guy, and again, he just executed this 23-year-old girl. No reason, she wasn't a threat to him. He just broke into the house, dragged her naked out of bed, and shot her in the head. Didn't know her, just decided, I'm going to kill this young girl. So, folks, that's the state of the world we live in. And if you don't have a means to protect yourself, I think you're being foolish. All right. Anything else before we move on to our taxpayer relief shots?
Nope.
All right. For those who haven't heard this in a long time, let me tell you why we call them taxpayer relief shot. Here's this sheriff in Santa Rosa County, Florida. Oh, hang on. Let me turn this up and get the volume going.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And as we've talked about many times, if a thug is arrested, the first thing he does, if he gets a trial, he gets a court-appointed public defender, and a jury trial, is going to last a week. It's going to cost $200,000, and then if he gets 10 years in jail at $80,000, by the way, it's 80 to 120, depending where. In California, it's 120,000 a year. So let's say it's 100,000 a year, 10 years in jail, 8 years in jail is another $1 million. So when the thug is killed, we call it DRT, dead right there. You save the taxpayers a whole bunch of money and probably saved your family from a lot of grief and possibly bodily injury. So here's this follow-up taxpayer relief shot from last month. I think this guy was in his 70s. He owned a jewelry store and he lived above it. And here's the update. Here's what the prosecutor, district attorney decided.
Christine Wilson remembers what happened when gunfire broke out at the corner jewelry store on Fleet Street in Canton that early morning, just after 2 a.m. on October 16th, when the store's owner opened fire on a suspected burglar, killing him. The incident unfolded near Wilson's home.
I heard it right outside my window. And so kind of nervous about it, called 911.
On Monday, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates with a decision. The fatal shooting during what police called a possible burglary has been ruled as self-defense. The elderly store owner who lives above the store won't face criminal charges.
That is fantastic news. That is great news for all of us in this neighborhood. Yeah, it's great. It's nice to see that you don't go to jail for taking care of your family.
Bates identified the man killed as 39-year-old Richard Rolfe. In a statement Monday, Bates said, based on the facts of this case, we believe that this shooting meets the requirements of self-defense in the state of Maryland. Under Maryland law, a crime can be ruled as self-defense or defense of habitation if it meets several factors, including a suspect attempted to enter a home or property. The property owner believes the person intends to commit a crime that would lead to death or serious injury, and the property owner reasonably believed force was necessary.
People do have the right to protect themselves, and thank God we do.
According to the investigation, the homeowner believed Rolfe was armed. It was later discovered that he did not have a gun. In Bates' statement, he said, based on the investigation in this case, while it was later determined that Mr. Rolfe did not have a gun, it is reasonable that the homeowner believed Mr. Rolfe was armed.
Well, I'm going to end it there. There's another minute where he's wrapping up, but again, it's the guy doesn't have, the only thing that the law requires is that you had a reasonable belief that your life was in danger. Now it's the middle of the night and it's dark and this guy's in your house or in your store. Reasonable belief that the guy's here to hurt me and that he might be armed.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be armed, but all you have to do is say, I believed he was. And if if they can't prove that you had no reason to believe he was armed, then your shooting was justified. So Thug was dead right there. I just thought that was a good summary and follow-up. Any thoughts or comments?
Absolutely. Good for him for defending his family.
Yep. All right. Anything you want to add before we wrap up for the night?
No.
All right, then. Well, I want to thank all of you who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about the things that I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found those topics as interesting and important as I did. And if so, I hope you continue to listen to the podcast in the weeks and months to come. Now, if you want to see some of the materials and story links you heard me talk about today, if you give producer Susan a day or two, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jersey being spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, J-E-R-Z-E-E, jerzeejoe.com, no space. However, if you'd like me to send you any specific story link, just send me an email to joe at jerzeejoe.com. You can send me a question, a suggested show topic. If you want me to send you one of these story links, I'll be happy to do it. So just send me a joe at jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and two E's. And with that,
something we should have said at the beginning of the show, it is November 11th. It is Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day to those who have served and kept us safe.
Be safe and thank you for your service, all you veterans listening. All right. Well, producer Susan, thanks for your help tonight, and I'll talk to you next week. You take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.